To me, it's really a pleasure to introduce you to Interreg Volunteer Youth, since I've been an IVY volunteer myself. So I'm quite happy to tell you a bit in general what is IVY. Well, first of all, as you might have seen also on our website, IVY, it's a volunteering program. The idea is to promote Interreg cooperation, so European territorial cooperation. The idea of IVY is that Interreg programs and projects can host young people, so IVY volunteers, in order to receive concrete supports in concrete activities, which are, for instance, communication activities, but also with implementation activities, especially linked to the project, Interreg projects. IVY volunteers, since they are also young people, they can bring new perspective, new ideas, also fresh ways of developing projects and programs. So this is in a way the added value of IVY and volunteering with IVY and hosting IVY volunteers. The initiative started in 2017. So now we are celebrating the 6th anniversary of IVY. We put the date in March, which is when the first volunteer was deployed in a first host organization. And the initiative was co-funded by DG Regio, so the European Commission, and AEBR. AEBR is the Association of European Boards and Regions. They started the initiative together, and now the Association of European Boards and Regions is in charge of the implementation, managing the initiative on behalf of DG Regio. We will tell you more about all the actors, so you will have a more clear picture of the initiative. Well, the value of IVY, it's promoting also solidarity, cooperation, and of course, territorial cooperation, so Interreg. But here we wanted to identify 3 main goals of IVY. So what is this initiative about? Basically, the first goal is support implementation and communication of Interreg projects and programs. So hosting young people will make the program or the projects more visible, and by doing this, also territorial cooperation more visible, especially at local level, among citizens, among other young people, but also at European level, since anyhow it's by itself an initiative from the European Commission. At the same time, also one core value of IVY is empowering young people to engage in cooperation. I would say this was my case as well. I didn't know about Interreg before. I got to know it thanks to IVY. I got passionate. Now I still work in Interreg. This is also the idea, to make other young people interested, passionate, able to understand what is Interreg, how it works, and just spread the word around. So each IVY experience is quite unique. Of course, there are some common points. For instance, every experience lasts between 2 and 6 months. And mainly there are 2 roles in IVY. IVY volunteers can be IVY reporters or can be IVY project partners. This depends if the volunteer is deployed at program level or at project level in a way. Now I believe the majority of you are program representatives or project beneficiaries in a way. And this is why also there are these 2 ways of volunteering with IVY. So IVY reporters help their host organization, so the program, to show the results of the program itself, the cooperation area, so also the projects under the program. The IVY project partners, which was, for instance, my case when I used to be an IVY volunteer, are the ones that support the implementation of the project, its dissemination, better communication among partners, and so on. One important element here also to stress is the fact that IVY volunteer can be coming from abroad, but they can also come from your own community. It can be maybe someone that is already part of your region or your city that maybe is interested in discovering more about territorial cooperation. Maybe it's already aware of the needs of the territory, but it's eager to know more about how to cooperate to solve those needs, for instance. So it can be a regional experience, but also international experience, so to say. Here we go a bit deeper on the roles, as I mentioned before. So we have Interreg reporters, Interreg project partners. We wanted to give a kind of first understanding on what are the tasks, what is the real support that IVY volunteers can offer you. Those activities that you see here are just some. Actually, IB volunteers can support in very different ways. What is important to understand is that IB reporters mainly are at program level, which also means that they support mainly communication activities, dissemination activities for the program and for the area of cooperation. So also for all the projects in the area. They might be helping with social media, for instance, showing, for example, the output, the results of all projects in the area, maybe sharing the result and the goal of the Interreg program and so on. Well, I guess we can all say that young people are in principle good with digital skills. So for instance, they can support with the website, maybe also giving some ideas, some new ideas. For instance, if you are thinking about a communication strategy, it could be good to have a young person that can share their experience on how to make Interreg, also talking to citizens, talking to other young people, how to make the information more clear, more easy to understand, also for those who are not familiar already with Interreg. So this is a little bit of the role of an IB reporter. So show the achievement, the goals of the program and all the projects in the cooperation area. And here we have the role of an IB project partner, which is different because, as I said, it's a project level. So it's supporting one specific Interreg project, so one specific action in a way, but has two different tasks, might have two different tasks, which are linked to the implementation of the project and the communication of the project. So in case you are a project beneficiary, so maybe you represent, I don't know, a specific project and you are one of the partners or you are the lead partner and so on, you can host an IB volunteer that can help you in collecting some data, preparing some data, showing the data also in a more user-friendly way. So for example, might have some graphic skills, so help you with some specific digital tools. Can also help you to reach out other citizens, other young people. So all these communication aspect again, which in this case, it's not linked to the cooperation area such, but to the specific project. At the same time, also, the volunteer will help you in the implementation of the project. What does it mean? There are different activities, actually. It depends a lot on the project itself. For instance, we used to have some volunteers in a project between Spain and Portugal that was about creating an historical route among the two regions sharing the border. A volunteer was there to track all the trees for the historical route. So it might be also something very concrete on the field that volunteer can support you with. So just to summarize the information, we have Interreg IB reporters. So if you are at program level, you might be interested to host an IB reporter. If you are at project level, you might be interested to host an IB project partner. The roles are slightly different, but in both cases, the idea is really to get some support for communication in case you are a program, or for communication and implementation in case you are a project representing a project. I mentioned some of the actors that compose this IB initiative, but IB volunteers are not the only representing the IB initiative. We have other actors, as you can see and as you can imagine. I mentioned the fact that IB it belongs somehow to the European Commission. The European Commission is the promoter of the Interreg Youth initiative. They launched the idea together with AEBR, and AEBR is managing the initiative on behalf of DG Regio. AEBR is also taking care of administrative financial aspect, which means that, for instance, we try to make for host organizations these administrative procedures as easy as possible. And also we play this role of mediator, which means that, for instance, if there is something not clear, or in case of any possible concern or issue or question, whatever, between the host organization and the volunteer, we are also here to support both. So to support the volunteer, but also to support the host organization. Well, very important to say the IB community. As we said, IB now is 6 years old. which also means that there are many host organizations that have hosted IB volunteers, that are still hosting IB volunteers. We have more than 830 volunteers since the very beginning, which equals to 284 projects, different organizations from 284 projects and 59 programs. These also create a kind of community because it's also a way to share the same values, as I mentioned, like solidarity, volunteering, cooperation. It's a way to connect also with this human approach, to get to know experts of cooperation and young people interested. So this is a bit the idea of this IB community. So the IB community is mainly made by host organizations, which are the ones responsible to welcome the volunteer in the team, to show, to in a way also guide the volunteer. And in order to provide a good guidance, there is one main person, one main contact point in the host organization, who is the mentor. You will get to know, you will get more familiar with this word if you don't know them yet. This is just the first introduction, but for you, it is important now just to have a first understanding is that the mentor is the person within your organization that it's the contact point. So it's the one that will exchange with us, will exchange the most with the volunteer, and will work shoulder by shoulder with the volunteer, will guide also the volunteer in this understanding of European territorial cooperation. And then we have, of course, the volunteers. So we have those young people that bring their skills, put their skills at disposal of the host organization for a better implementation or communication of Interreg. So bringing their skills, their creativity, their youth energy, in a way, their passions for the benefit of Interreg. So this is a first idea of IB. What is IB? We are going to explain you deeper all these aspects, for instance, why, what is volunteering with IB, and also how to apply, who is eligible. But in order to do so, I actually pass the floor to my colleagues that will guide you through the second part of the presentation.
Thank you, Milena. Indeed, I will go a bit more in detail in what is the volunteering aspect of Interreg Volunteer Youth. IB is a volunteering experience in the sense that the young people that take part in this initiative do it for a non-profit cause and with the objective to promote European territorial cooperation. It is not a job, it's not an internship, it is really an experience that we take part in to make visible the spirit of solidarity that is part of this territorial cooperation, and also to support the Interreg projects and programs. So by hosting an IB volunteer, you as an organization also show the solidarity dimension of Interreg to the young people that are taking part of this in this initiative, but also through the support of these young people by reaching your local communities and raise awareness of the impact that this program and your project activities have on the territory. But what does it mean in practice, volunteering? So as Milena already explained a bit before, there is two roles as IB volunteers, either an IB reporter when they are deployed in a program, or an IB project partner when they are deployed within a project beneficiary for the benefit of an Interreg project. So the volunteers are involved in the tasks in which they are helpful to showcase the benefit of cooperation. This type of task can be about communication, about Interreg. There is different ways to do it. All of your organizations have different ways to communicate. So this can be through articles, newsletter, social media, events, but also the communication between within the project between the different project partners, because there is different organizations involved in those projects, but also to communicate with the media, the local stakeholders, and institutions that are in that area or even beyond also. As well, Milena explained it, for example, for the project partners, it can be a very concrete activity, an activity that is at the core of your own project. For example, Milena was talking about the tourism route, where volunteers were directly on the field. We have also other projects where volunteers are directly going at sea to take samples on environmental projects. So it can be very specific to your own activities. Also in the day-to-day, in the practice, how does it look like? Volunteers, the volunteer experience can be 2 to 6 months, but on the day-to-day, a volunteer contributes with their time for about 35 hours per week. They're also, well, they're volunteer, but they're also entitled to holidays. So it's about two days per month of volunteering. The detail of this, of the schedule, the weekly schedule or the monthly schedule is to be discussed between the volunteer and the mentor, depending also on the needs of each one. And also volunteering, so IB is not a remote experience, it's an in-person experience. And because it has also this dimension of interpersonal exchange and cultural and cooperation aspects. So that's why we also expect all volunteers to, if they're not from the local area, to relocate to the local area of their mission and to be in contact on a daily basis with their host organization, with the partners of the project. And who are actually these volunteers? So actually, volunteers are young people aged 18 to 30 years old. Those young people are either residents or citizens of the participating countries. You will see later we have a little list of all the eligible countries and the territories in which mission can take place. These young people are actually, as I said before, putting at contribution their time, their skills for a cause. And they're not interns. So they're not interns, they're not trainees. So this means that they do not come to learn. Of course, there is a learning dimension at all time, but they're here because they do have a certain knowledge, a certain skill, and a motivation to put these skills and knowledge to contribution for the benefit of cooperation and solidarity. And that's why we do consider those, our IB volunteers, as almost peers of any other staff members of the project or the program, because they do have their knowledge and creativity that they bring to the team, but they're not employees. So this means that all the activities are taken for the values of solidarity, and they should not be expected to carry out financial or administrative tasks, as this is, we can consider that as routine task, and also a task with responsibility that they should not bear, as they are not employees of the organization. But why do they volunteer? Well, I think myself also, Milena shared a bit of her experience. I did also an IB volunteering a few years ago as a reporter in a program where I was helping with communication. I was actually interested into putting my own knowledge and skills for the benefit of territorial cooperation. And the dimension of this civic engagement and solidarity is the core motivation of an IB experience. And because it's volunteering, and to avoid making volunteering a privilege or a very reduced opportunity for young people, our IB volunteers do have some benefits. So they do receive a financial support, a full insurance coverage. We also contribute to their travel costs. So all of this is taken care of by AEBR, which implements the initiative, so that the volunteer can fully commit to their project or program without having the worry of sustaining themselves. Also, while volunteering, well, I said before that it is not a learning experience. There is always the learning aspect. So that's why throughout the IB experience, the volunteers receive a training from us, from other platforms, and also through the mentors in the host organizations. They can see how an EU project unfolds, how a program also is run, and they become part of a dynamic network, the IB community, but also the Interreg community, as IB volunteers keep in touch, keep being involved afterwards. And it does bring also some recognition and careers benefit, as a few, if not many, of the IB volunteers from the 800 are still involved nowadays in cooperation. And then also during their experience, they're able to go a bit beyond. They're granted a grant to organize a local event. This is a citizen engagement activity, which actually goes beyond of Interreg. They have the possibility to promote cohesion policy in Europe. So they're able to organize their own events, to directly be in contact with the local communities, to showcase the concrete achievement of cooperation and cohesion policy. And well, yeah, sorry, thank you. And what do they bring? Well, they bring their skills. These young people, every young person has a specific skill, a specific idea, a specific creativity that they bring onto the table to add to the European territorial cooperation. And that's what IB allows them to do. That's how, through hosting a volunteer, you bring on this added knowledge, that added experience to your project and program. How? So once you apply for a mission, once there is an IB mission that is identified from a host organization, we have two ways. We have our own database of volunteers, of young persons that did register, express their motivation and their field of interest. So we go through our database to see if we already have a candidate that is suitable, that will bring this added value to your project or program. Or we also promote your offer and receive applications. And from all these applications in our database, we select about 6 candidates that we will then present you for you to look through and see how the collaboration can go onwards through this IB experience. And to actually make this collaboration possible, I will actually leave my colleague Cynthia present you more about how to host and what are the different steps to come through.
Thank you, Becta. And I think now you should be seeing my screen, right? Yes, perfect. Thank you. Exactly. So let's look at this. So good morning, everyone. So from my side, my name is Cinzia. I'm working together with Milena and Becta, of course. And yeah, I'll show you a little bit more about the host. So I will also not be able to reply to questions on the chat, but we can look at all the questions after my little part here. So who is eligible to host? As mentioned, basically all the programs bodies. So first of all, managing authorities and joint secretariats, but also national authorities, national contact points, and macro-regional strategies, specifically when dealing with Interreg. So the macro-regional strategies, for example, are eligible to host, but in the work that is related to Interreg specifically, because as we said initially, the objective of IB is in the very first place to increase the visibility of Interreg as such, of cooperation as such. And all the project beneficiaries, this is one of the questions that came up already in the chat, the leader partners, all the partners, also partners of small projects and associated partners, again, if there's enough work, enough tasks related directly to the Interreg project, but they can all host, and also at the same time, we already have one project, for example, in which more than one of the partners are hosting at the same time one volunteer, which also can create a network between the volunteers, then help them interact with each other, for example, throughout the countries. So this is possible as well. What is important is that the project hosting must be an ongoing project. So currently realized under implementation project, and yeah, all Interreg programs are very welcome to participate in IEV. So cross-border, transnational, interregional, outermost regional cooperation, IPA CBC and Interreg Next. We are covering all programs, all Interreg programs. All eligible territories, so both beneficiaries as well as volunteers actually can come from all the countries that are involved in Interreg, so all the countries of the European Union, including the outermost regions, and as well at the moment Switzerland and the UK, as long as they are involved, especially thinking about the UK, as long as they are involved in Interreg. So as long as the peace program, for example, is going, then the UK is also eligible. But also, as you know, there are programs with other countries like Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. They can also host. And also countries, IPA CBC countries and NECBC countries. So all these countries are eligible to participate. So as long as partners are involved in Interreg in any of these countries, they can apply. We are also working together with the Commission in the future to open up to partners of outermost region and missing countries. And this is going to be toward the end of the year. So for sure, there is basically everywhere where Interreg exists, then IV is also either already a possibility or an upcoming possibility. So why to participate as a host organization? What can you take advantage from it? Oops, I hope that you see my screen, not with I'm cutting the volunteer, at least in how I see it. So host organization, of course, as Milena and Becca already pointed out very forcefully, there is of course the support that a person that is motivated and has the skills that you require, that will help you with your program or with your project, bringing a different idea, different perspective, especially with the aim of involving young people, understanding also what the perspective of young people can be, which can be very useful, especially in communication, and also the creativity, right? The flexibility of what it's a volunteering program. As we said before, it's not just about shadowing, doing an internship, but it's really about giving the opportunity to young people to bring their voice in it. And we believe that this can really be a big support, and we've seen it actually also from feedback report of host organization, that it can really be a nice advantage. As we mentioned before as well, for you as host organization, basically there are no costs because the financial support, the contribution to travel costs, and the insurance are covered directly by us, by AEBR, with the fundings of DG Regio. So for you, there are no costs. And so, yeah, that's basically a given there. And of course, we believe it's a very enriching experience for the host and the volunteers. So for both parties involved, it can be very interesting and personal, but also productive experience in terms of to foster cooperation. Oopsie. Okay. And of course, because we are very, very grateful to our host organization, and we do recognize the extra work as well that eventually can be put in hosting someone, we also want to really recognize the role of host organization in empowering young people for an interterritorial cooperation. So we have created these digital badges that can be put on websites, for example, or on social media, really to show that we are proud of being a community that empowers and believes in young people bringing their own contribution and creativity. What do we expect from host organization? So what would be what is this extra work that I mentioned slightly? So of course, every volunteer, as already mentioned before, needs one mentor. So a person that is responsible for the volunteer, that follows the volunteer, and someone that offers supervision and guidance basically to the volunteer, that provides also a personal support during the learning process of the volunteer, because as mentioned before, it's not only about learning, but of course there is a bit of a learning procedure. I mean, Interreg is complex enough. I think everyone's putting their first foot into Interreg has to learn a lot at the very beginning. And also then we expect that the host organization ensures a little bit of a evaluation and training in the sense of helping the volunteer to get familiar basically with the activities of the project or of the program, and with the way of working of the program and the project. So there are these aspects. As we said, we take care of the host of the administrative issues. We prepare the contract, for example, for the volunteer. We give the money directly to the volunteer. A little bit of help can be needed, of course, because you are the ones on the ground. So it could be that we ask for a little bit of help, a little bit of information, inviting the volunteers, especially there where a volunteer comes from outside of the EU, for example, and a visa is needed. So a little bit of that is to be taken, of course, into consideration. And let's look a bit more in detail at the mentor role. So who is the mentor? The mentor will be chosen directly by you when you apply, because you know best who's the best person who can help the volunteer integrate and be the person that can listen to the mentor. So that said, the mentor has primarily these four tasks to help the volunteer to familiarize with the environment of the organization, but also with the program and the project specifically. So the mentor is the one, for example, that introduces the volunteer to other colleagues and to other project partners, is the one that on the one hand prepares the first task for the volunteer. And as we said before, we want the volunteer really to also be an active person within the experience. So the mentor will also be the person that discuss together with the volunteer which task, for example, can be taken up by the volunteer, which task does the volunteer want to suggest. So the mentor is the one that basically discusses the volunteering load, so to say. Is also the one that provides a bit of a feedback and a guidance. We've also noticed how important it is for young people to receive a feedback and to feel a little bit of this guidance. So we do expect that from the mentor as well, and also like to be this listening person, to listen actively to the volunteer and offer support when there are doubts, but also difficulties. Sometimes, of course, we are professionals, but also humans. So in case of, the mentor would be the person that captures a little bit of both aspects, also the human aspects in case there are difficulties. We ask the mentor, of course, also to provide support in that sense as well. So let's look how to apply. We hope that so far we have whet your enthusiasm for this initiative, and let's see how you can participate. So we would say that is a very, very easy application. We'll go through together as well if there's time afterwards, maybe after the Q&A, if someone has extra questions, but let's admit it, you have all received funding from Interreg. Our application form will definitely not scare you off. So what is important to follow in the procedure to apply? First of all, a very important task is to identify which kind of activities, at least for the beginning, or like which macro activities you would like the volunteer to do. The more it's important also to take well into consideration for how long you want to host a volunteer. If you're thinking of hosting someone for 6 months, make sure that you have a good plan for the 6 months, or at least for for 4th month, and then you can modify it together with the volunteer, depending also on her and his interest and skills, particular skills. But the more you can be clear on those activities that you need support with, the better. Once you have done this, you can fill in the program and project notes. The project note, of course, for project beneficiary, the program note, of course, for the program side. For project beneficiaries, we are also asking for a letter of approval. It's literally just a letter of approval that confirms that the project is an ongoing project under a specific program, and that and this can be signed by anyone you're in contact with at the program level. So it's basically a 1/2 document application, so it's very fast and easy in that sense. Once we have reviewed it and approved it, which usually we do within a few days, we look for the candidates, as Becta already mentioned. So we look for candidates for you. We have a pre-selection of candidates that we, according to the needs that you have laid out in your project, in the application notes, we will look for candidates that have similar skills, similar competencies, for example, in order to make sure that you have the person that you need, the best supports your needs, for example. Then you are free to choose how many of these 5 candidates, usually we send, 6 candidates, that you want to not interview really, to have a call, an introductory call, to get to know each other, and to talk about expectation and the mission. You can, of course, have this call with all 6 or just a few, depending on what your needs are and depending on what your preferences are. And then, of course, it's completely up to you to decide which candidate is the one that you would like to host. You just let us know, and then we prepare the administrative steps. So we prepare then the contract for both of you to be signed. We receive some of the other documents of the volunteer, and we make the payment for the volunteer, so everything is settled, and we insure the volunteer as well. That said, it's also possible that we skip some of this if you already have someone that you are in touch with, like a previous, a young person that would like to be part of your team, for example, but as there are no ways to involve this autonomously, so to say, of course, you're also welcome to just put us in touch with this person and let us know that you would like to host this specific person. So we're also happy to accommodate this. Don't know why okay, here we go. Where to find the application and the guideline in our website, which I'll put in the chat in 1 second. So here you can find all the documents. Oopsie, you cannot see my, I think you are still seeing my, Zoom. So I think you can still see my.
Yes.
Okay. Because I got lost in too many. Okay, sorry, I have to stop sharing, go back to sharing, sorry. There we go. And here in the chat is the links. Okay, so here on this page, you can find the documents to be applied, to apply with. So the program note for programs, the project note, and the so-called managing authority joint secretariat approval, which is just this letter, as I mentioned. You will also find the guidelines for IAV host organization, which outlines literally all the aspects of hosting, from how does IAV work, how should I be as a mentor, and so on and so on, how everything works. So we tried really to explain as much as possible everything. As I mentioned, we review the application documents within a few days after the submission, and usually there might be a little bit of a ping pong depending if we have any comments, for example, any corrections, any suggestions to make to your application documents. And then once that we have approved it, it takes between 4 and 8 weeks to find the right person, to make the contract, to start the administrative procedure, and for the volunteer to start. Now, because we're running a little bit out of time, I would say we don't go through the application documents, which you can find on our website. Just to let you know, basically it's divided in different sections. The first one really is for us to understand your organization profile. So it's for you to give information about the program or the project, for example, so we can give this information to the candidates that are looking for placement offers with us. In letter C, basically, is to show your motivation to host a volunteer. As we mentioned before, for us, it's very important, the solidarity dimension, for example, and we want to test a little bit of that aspect in your application. Then letter D outlines the responsibilities of the host organization, so that you're all aware of what the expectations are also for the host organization and the mentor specifically. And then we're looking for the profile of the volunteer that you're looking for. So we give you the chance to describe in detail what you're looking for. And then at the end, we ask for some measures to check the support measures for the volunteer, for the integration of the volunteer. As mentioned, you can find everything on the website under this link that you have in the chat, and please also refer to the guideline for the host organization that you will find there too for more information. As Milena mentioned before, we had already over 800 volunteers so far. Host organization seems to be very happy as well. It's a fairly innovative, for Interreg at least, measure, and the host organization as well as the European Commission are also very happy. Also the European Commission, we have, there are some former IB volunteers now working there in Interact, in many Interreg programs and projects. So it's growing. It has shown in the last 6 years that it has a lot to give. So we are very satisfied with that. Here are our contact details. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And of course, we're happy if you help us raise our visibility on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, of course. Okay, let's look at the chat in case of questions. And also feel free to take the floor directly. I'll stop sharing. So if there are any questions, you can jump in directly.
I think we managed to reply all the questions from the chat in the meantime, but if you have any further questions, please feel free to just take the floor and ask any.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just for those who might not have seen the chat, so which is, okay. In the meantime, we can actually give Borbola the floor. So please, Borbola.
Hi, I was trying to, hi, my name is Borbola, and I was also trying to follow the chat. But I think the question which I have may be relevant is that if, for instance, first we ask for 2 months and then there is, more things to do, or it became really effective, then it can be prolonged, for instance, from 2 to 6 months on an easygoing way. It is advised to start rather with 2 months to be more careful, or...
It really depends on you, on the tasks that you foresee for the volunteer. So for sure, I would say the most important aspect at the very beginning is to understand what you need support with, because this will also set the pace with the volunteer. You can extend, and I have to say it happens it happens. On the other hand, because of course the person starts with an expectation. So if someone especially is relocating, knowing that he or she is relocating for 2 months, it might be very different than to say for 6 months, because, they might start like a new university or a new project. They already know it's happening. So I would say it's better to have a clearer view at the beginning, but it's possible to extend to a maximum of 6 months. It is possible to extend. Thanks. In the meantime, maybe just to go through the question in case someone has not read them. So for now, we have received question asking if the volunteer can come from the same countries, for example, of the host organization. Yes. Yes, because we believe that Interreg is very much about Europe and cooperation anyway, right? So it's about bringing Europe also at home So in fact, this is one of my favorite aspects, the fact that you can discover Europe in your same area. You don't have to travel. So yes, you can also, with Ivy, you can directly host from someone from your country. Also, we understand that in Interreg often, especially for programs, the language is for projects as well, the language is a very important aspect. So of course the volunteer needs to master probably your own language, and maybe it's not so easy to find someone from Spain that speaks Swedish, for example. So that's an aspect that we take into consideration as well. Just very briefly, can SMEs, so private entities which are part of an Interreg project, host? Yes, as said in the chat, it's possible, because every project partner basically can host a volunteer, and eventually it happens, of course, that young people need to have an internship recognized by the university. It's not our favorite scenario, of course, but we understand that this is a need that young people have. So we are happy to accommodate that. In this case, it's important that the values of volunteering are kept in the very foreground of the experience. What does that mean? For example, we would require that the host organization has this kind of flexibility that we request, that the volunteer is seen also as a volunteer, is seen as a volunteer within the Interreg program and project. That means that is given, he or she is given the opportunity to speak up, to bring own contributions, for example, that is given this extra space that is not only about shadowing and learning the work, for example, and then if it's just about signing that it's that the volunteer has completed an internship, why not? If we can help each other, I think better to help each other. That's a little bit our mission, I suppose. Okay, then this was me replying. Exactly, can happen that more project partners taking part in a project can host. So especially if you are here representing all the beneficiary of a project, you can also, we're happy, of course, if you can inform also your partners. So if you want to host, but they can host as well. There's no competition in that sense. Important thing as mentioned before, only ongoing projects can host. So for programs, of course, because it's about communication and maybe capitalization, of course, the volunteer can also at the program level look at the past projects to help the capitalization and communication, but in projects, there must be ongoing projects. The financial support, you can actually also find it here. Here we have FAQs with some comments. We have the same for volunteers, and there you can find the rates, for example, in your country. Maybe an important aspect that, in fact, we have not mentioned so far, here the FAQs for the volunteers, where you can find the rates for each country. Host organization, of course, they can top up as well. We understand that, especially unfortunately now with the increase of prices, a little bit more help for volunteers is only welcome from any side. So host organization can decide to top up what we give to the volunteers. However, because Ivy is 100%, well, actually 95% funded through ERDF money, if you give extra support to the volunteer, this should not come from ERDF money, because there would be a double funding. So it would have to come from own resources of the host organization. But with that said, it can be applied as well. Sorry, I'm looking for a question. If in the meantime someone would like to take the floor, please do so. There have been a lot of questions actually, so exactly, volunteers can apply directly on our website. Sorry, I wanted to put the link there, but then I couldn't find it. But I suppose now you have the link on our website, so volunteers can apply directly there. We normally at the moment, actually, we don't have any placement offers. Normally they are all under the page placement offers, and then the volunteers can open it, see exactly what the tasks are, what the requirements are, the period, for example, and if everything for the volunteer works, then he or she can directly apply to that specific placement offer, for example. Unfortunately, yeah, we cannot show you how it is at the moment. But once it's there, it's fairly easy to apply also for them. Is it possible to get the recording of this meeting? Yes. Yes, I think that maybe the best is that we will put it on the YouTube page of AEBR, the Association of European Border Regions, and I will send you an email maybe with that link as well and the presentation, so you have all the material. Exactly. Then municipalities that are involved in Interreg programs and projects, yes, in projects, yes, they can host as well. There are no limitations there. I would like to be an IB volunteer, and I was wondering if I can only see open position for projects through your website, or maybe we can also contact directly host organization. Yeah, this is an interesting question that always I would be interested to hear also the perspective from the host organization. Normally, it happens that someone would really like to do a volunteering experience with us. They have more or less an area or an area of interest. So we encourage them to look for projects, looking at the keep.eu website of Interact, where they can find what they're interested in, and then we contact the host organization to see if they would like to host a volunteer, for example. So we also try try to push a little bit the volunteers in that sense within the host organization, because we believe that it's a good opportunity anyway. And then it's of course up to the host organization to decide whether they have the capabilities to host or not, because we understand that of course it's not always possible to host an extra person. That depends very much on the organization. So the last decision, of course, is up to the host organization that we have contacted. But of course, we contact more than once. Ideally, then does the organization need to be accredited, like in the European Solidarity Corps program, or only lead partner can host? No, that is the easy part, so to say, because you're part of Interreg. So you're already part of a well-known community, so to say, that works usually very well. There's no need to be accredited with the project or the program notes. Basically, we test a little bit, we see a little bit what the intentions are, what the tasks are, and then that's it as a unique document to apply. So once that is completed, we can simply allow you to host together with thanks to the mentioning of the letter of approval from the related program. And of course, all the partners can apply. Who is supervising the mentor and the volunteers in the project work environment? We don't require a mentor, a supervision of the mentor. We believe, we trust that you find the best person within the team, within your team, to identify who is the best person to be able to accompany, so to say, the volunteer. In case of question, as Milena answered also in the chat, of course, we are at disposal. We through also the project note already. This is a little bit of a first check. Yeah, I hope that this helps enough to understand. And of course, exactly, we are eventually happy to support if there are any questions from the mentor side to us as well. Next question: from your experience, what would be your suggestion either to ask an Interreg volunteer at the beginning of the project implementation or once the project is up and running? That's a very good question. This is very much up to you. The important thing is really for you to understand what is the best moment to be able to follow an extra person. Follow means, for example, being able to mentor, right? So to give to embark a new person, but also to have enough activities for the person to do. I have to say, in general, we can say that the worst that can happen, that has happened so far, is really when the volunteer gets frustrated because there's not enough tasks to do. So that's why also before I was really stressing, make sure you plan well when to host and in which phase of the project, because really this is a little bit the key to be able to understand. So this is really up to you to understand which one is the best phase, depending really also what your role in the project is. If you're more in the preparation, for example, then the very beginning would be the best phase. If you are more in the communication, then it's probably the very end of the project. If you're really in the implementation, then maybe is right the middle of the project. So this is up to you, so to say. Legal entity requirement to host organization. Well, the legal requirement is to already be part of an Interreg programs or projects. So only if you already are, so basically you must already be implementing a project in order to be able to host. So that's why people coming together like an European Solidarity Corps project wouldn't be able to host because they wouldn't be a project beneficiary. If there are more questions on this, if there are doubts on this, of course, we can discuss it individually. Does the IB also support the host organization? As Milena said, so the volunteer. So you mean probably if we as AEBR, as the IB team, support the host organization? Well, we're here to help. So whatever would be the need, for example, we're happy to have an individual call or reply to emails when something is needed. So yeah, I hope that this replies to the question. Okay, is mandatory to post the volunteering position on specific website, or we can offer the opportunity to as a volunteer to someone that you might basically know? No, it's not mandatory. We don't publish those offers that are internal matches, so to say. So as I mentioned before, if you already have someone in mind, you simply put us in touch with the person, and then of course we don't publish it. It's not necessary, because then we just make the agreement for you and the insurance for the volunteer, but nothing else. So yeah. How long the entire process application looks like in average, from the first day of from the submission to the application to the first day? Good question. It really depends. Before I mentioned between these 4 and 8 weeks. If you have an internal match and the person is already insured, it can even go in 1 week eventually. No, we always ask actually a minimum of 2 weeks, just to give us also the time to make sure that everything works. As we mentioned, it's possible to host someone from your own country. It becomes a bit more complicated for us in that sense, because we cannot apply our usual package of the insurance. Usually we have a package of insurance like the one that many other volunteering programs or international programs use. However, it's not applicable, of course, when someone is in the same country, because they're always like kind of traveling insurances that are awesome, very easy to use, but they have this limitation. In that case, usually we have to start looking for an insurance, extra insurance. We have good connections by now after 6 years of doing this job, but sometimes we still have gaps. So it depends on how fast do we find an insurance, how fast can this person start, can the policy be started. and so on. So it might take then, in this case, a couple of weeks more. Also, if you are requesting 4 or 3 languages, it becomes very complicated. So it also depends on the requirements of the project. If you're looking for someone with specific skills in engineering that speaks French, Spanish, and Portuguese and English, of course, it starts becoming very hard. So it might take a bit longer. So this is, in general, as we said, between 4, it can even be like 3 weeks to 8 weeks, and this depends a little bit on the complication of the case. It's also possible for the program to create a liaison with the organization to see if there's potential collaboration on a project, to collaborate on a project with them. I'm not sure I'm understanding this question, so if the person is still here, even though I noticed that we're taking a bit too longer than we thought, if you want to intervene directly, please do feel free to take the microphone. In the meantime, I continue, but if this person is still here and would like to ask the question, please do feel free to come in. Is it possible to ask for 2 volunteers? Programs can host 2 volunteers per year, project 1 volunteer per year. So, yeah. Can be the same volunteer. 1 volunteer can support more than 1 project at the same time. Can be this, I'm not sure. So volunteers can only volunteer with us once. So once you've done your IV experience, you cannot repeat it. So if this was the question, the volunteer should be only in once. If on the other hand, as Milena replied also, if 1 volunteer can be involved in more than 1 project, for example, at the same time. So let's say that we as a host organization have 2 Interreg projects ongoing. The volunteer can be involved in 2 at the same time. Again, just count measure a little bit the amount of work for the volunteer, how easy it's going to be for the volunteer to be involved in 2 projects or in 3 projects, as long as you think it's feasible and we agree with you with the review of the project note, then that's possible as well. Exactly, the accommodation, good point, even though I see that Becta has replied. So it's up to the volunteer with the financial support that they receive to find an accommodation for themselves. What we ask to the host organization is to help them with information. So maybe to put them in touch with someone or to give them those links that in every city are used to look for an accommodation, a room in a shared flat, for example, or whatever the volunteer wants, but to help them a little bit to facilitate the search for the accommodation. Can the host have the same volunteer each year? No, exactly. It's volunteering only once. So for the volunteers, so yeah, because it is a volunteering experience, they're not paid as they don't receive a salary. So it's amazing to do it once. It gets less fair to do it more than once. We believe that's why there is this limitation. Does an IV volunteer count an experience within an EU institution? Sometimes, in fact, there are these limitations for young people that you can only be a Blue Book trainee for the Commission once, and then you cannot do a Schumann application. No, in our case, no, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. I think that we have a very good rate of former volunteers than having been doing a Blue Book trainee. My suspicion is that also there's a filter there that looks for IV volunteers, because it's something that is really well recognized at the European Commission level. Again, this is just a personal suspicion, a personal idea, so don't quote me on that, but just to definitely confirm that no, there are no limitations in that sense. It doesn't impact the possibility then for a young person to do an internship as a Blue Book trainee. And on the other hand, in fact, I think it does help. If a CBC program, joint secretariat can host a volunteer, yes, definitely. That every grant project contracted through the IPA CBC program can also host correctly, exactly. And we're looking forward to extend our presence in the Balkans as well. No deadline to ask for volunteers. I mean, the project now is running until December 24. So there are the next 1.5 years, basically, in which you can ask at any time to host a volunteer. And as we said, like, usually we reply in a couple of days. So how do we understand the difference between a stagiaire, so intern, or an Interreg volunteer? Is not only a matter of naming. No, it's not, in the sense that for us it's important, as we mentioned before, that the volunteer is given the opportunity to speak up, to bring own ideas, to contribute really in an active way. And this is also what we tell them, right? So you also have to understand that we give this set of expectations, so that they can, so they arrive in your host organization thinking, okay, I can, you know, I'll arrive, I'll get comfortable, I'll understand what's all about, and then I will be able to bring my own ideas to be able to be involved fully and not seen just as someone who's there to learn. So that is what really makes a big difference. Also, we hope that our volunteers are participating really not only for learning, but because of this ideal of solidarity, of pushing solidarity also through their participation. In that sense, we think that in these ways it's really different from an internship. And we hope also that rules and flexibility applies slightly differently in this sense. A really specific question for Ivy: what is the difference between the USALP and the Interreg Alpine Space? Does it make a difference in the volunteering mission? Well, the volunteering mission really depends on what the host requests, really. So the difference in this case between the USALP and the Interreg Alpine Space would depend on what you as a host organization ask the volunteer to do. On the other hand, in this sense, there would be little difference because, as I said before, macro regions can apply, but in the way in which the volunteer should support then the Interreg programs or the Interreg projects that are within the strategy. So I don't know if this replies the question that also actually Becta has replied as well. But the idea is really that in this case, we give the opportunity to also the macro regions to support the Interreg Alpine Space by applying themselves for an Ivy that would, from the macro regions perspective, support the Alpine Space program. I hope it makes sense. Do the volunteers must have experience in some kind? This also has been already replied, but on the other hand, just for everyone, because there might be other people interested in the same questions, and it's easier, of course, to listen maybe than to read. Well, we definitely, because it's not a job, we're not very happy when we see, for example, 2 years experience in a request to host a volunteer, because we are not looking at experiences. Like the experience of being a volunteer is not about bringing specific sets of experiences that you need for your project. It's more like involving someone that has the motivation, the passion, the interest, the skills, because of course, for communicating about your project, you need someone that speaks Hungarian and Slovenian, of course, then we try to accommodate that as much as possible, because of course, communication must be done in certain languages. We understand that we cannot start speaking in Spanish in your program area, that is for sure. So this kind of skills we understand that are needed for you to be supported in your project. But on the other hand, we don't accept if someone says we would want someone who has 2 years experience or 3 or 5, It's not about specific experiences. We understand that you need competencies and we try to accommodate it as much as possible. But please remember when applying that it's not a job. So it shouldn't be the program and the project note should not be filled in with the same logic of finding a staff member. That wouldn't be fair. So we try to push for these experiences here. Host organization receive a financial contribution for hosting volunteers? No, unfortunately, no. Only the volunteers receive the financial support. On the other hand, there are no costs on the host organization side, so you can see up to you if it's interesting or not. Yes, the volunteers coming from the same country, of course, they also receive the financial support. We believe that everyone who does such an experience, they might need to pay a rent anyhow. We're not going to look if they are living with the parents or not. Of course, for some, it can become a little bit of a source of income, of course. This is not what it's supposed to be, but it's impossible for us to look at the details. On the other hand, as we mentioned, the financial support is given in order really to give to everyone the opportunity to do that. For some, it's a good amount of money that helps them cover the cost. For some people might not have costs, so it's just an extra amount of financial support that they receive. For others, unfortunately, we are aware that it's not even enough to cover all the costs. So this is something that we are trying to improve, but it's impossible to I guess, accommodate all the, to look at the details of all the specificities in reality. So the idea is simply that we give the same amount to everyone, just really to allow everyone to be able to take advantage of such an opportunity. Then it's up to them to see. We don't look at what happens with the money. Let's put it this way. Our core important thing is to give the opportunity to everyone. Okay, I don't know if there are more questions. I think we looked at everything that was in the chat, so we hope it was clear enough for everyone. There's something new in the chat at the very bottom. No, perfect. No new questions. If there are questions, you know where to find us. Our email is, you have it. You will have it again because, as we said, we will also send an email with the link to YouTube, to the recording and the slides. So you can also feel free, please, to share them with partners, programs, and so on. And if you have any questions, of course, we can always, you can also contact us via email. If necessary, of course, we can also organize an individual call if there are specific questions to be discussed together. Sorry that it took so much more than expected. It was really a lot more questions than expected, but that's a very good sign, actually. So we hope to receive many applications for volunteers soon. I don't know if Milena, Bekta, you would like to add anything else as well?
No, simply thank you for your interest, for your participation. We hope to get in touch. We will contact you, as Cinzia said, but we hope to exchange more often actually with you all and to start new collaboration as soon as possible with other new young volunteers involved in several areas of cooperation. So thank you for joining, and that's really all.
I think everything has been said. We all shared the
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.